Maybe it starts with something small, a text message, a forgotten chore, a cancelled plan, and suddenly you're having that argument again. The one you've had dozens of times before. Different person, different relationship, sometimes even different words. Yet somehow the ending always feels familiar. The frustration, the misunderstanding, the feeling that nobody is hearing what you're actually trying to say. Why does that keep happening? Most people think recurring arguments happen because the problem was never solved. But psychology suggests something more interesting. Research on relationship conflict has repeatedly found that couples often fall into predictable interaction patterns during disagreements. One of the most studied is called the demand-withdraw pattern. One person pushes for discussion, change, or reassurance, while the other retreats, avoids, or shuts down. What's fascinating is that the topic often changes. Money, time, affection, communication, but the emotional dance stays exactly the same, which raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if you're not arguing about the thing you're arguing about? Imagine two people standing on opposite sides of a locked door. One knocks harder and harder. The other steps farther and farther away. The more one pursues, the more the other retreats. And the more the other retreats, the more desperately the first pursues. Relationship researchers have observed this cycle for decades. It appears in romantic relationships, friendships, and even family dynamics. From the outside, it looks like a disagreement. But underneath, something else is happening. One person may be asking, "Do I matter to you?" The other may be asking, "Am I safe with you when you're upset?" Neither question is spoken aloud. Instead, they emerge disguised as arguments about dishes, lateness, attention, or tone of voice. This is why the same fight can survive multiple resolutions, because the surface problem gets addressed, the deeper fear does not. Research on attachment and relationships suggests that the way we respond to closeness, distance, conflict, and emotional stress is often shaped by earlier relational experiences. These patterns can continue influencing adult relationships long after the original situations have ended. In other words, sometimes you're not just arguing with your partner, you're arguing with an old expectation, an old fear, an old story about what relationships are supposed to feel like. Here's the twist. The same argument isn't usually evidence that two people keep failing. It's evidence that two nervous systems keep protecting themselves. Think about it. The person demanding reassurance often believes connection will solve the danger. The person withdrawing often believes distance will solve the danger. Both are trying to feel safe. They're simply moving in opposite directions. This is why logic rarely fixes recurring conflicts, because recurring conflicts are rarely logical problems. They're emotional survival strategies colliding with each other. The strange part is that both people usually want the same thing: understanding, security, love, but their protective instincts make them behave in ways that prevent exactly those outcomes. The fight becomes a loop, not because nobody cares, but because both people are protecting themselves from being hurt. The next time you find yourself having a familiar argument, try asking a different question. Not, "What are we fighting about?" but, "What are we afraid of?" Because beneath most recurring conflicts is a need that hasn't found better words yet. The argument is often just the visible part. The real conversation is happening underneath it. And until that deeper conversation is acknowledged, the same fight tends to keep returning, wearing different disguises. Think about the argument that seems to follow you from relationship to relationship. If you stripped away the topic entirely, what do you think it is really asking for?